Town of Knox Court. If you ever get papers from them
It's a good time.
as a jury,
Knox. Did we go there?
I think we did.
summons.
Yeah. It was kind of a shit show as well.
Kind of.
for for the deer
Well,
or for trespassing. Yeah.
For our non-guilty.
yeah.
You guys got a court summons?
I love
You
the
guys had a
story
case
of
against
Dad
you?
representing himself in
Yeah.
front of a
Oh, what is this? Hold on, I didn't know this. Tell this? Someone tell
He
this.
probably
story.
wants us to forget about it, but
Sure. Well,
So
no,
let's cement it into memory with a recording.
me-
Obviously.
Or Ryan,
I mean, it's not
Dad,
bad,
and
it's
myself were hunting around Thanksgiving, probably 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
yeah.
Something
James
like
is
that.
also out. He was in a different piece of land, but
Yep. But so, we're out there. We get 2 deer, and we start hauling them back. And
which, just to back up, is like we never get 2 deer.
no, yeah, it's
In the early morning too, like it was perfect.
perfect day.
Couldn't ask for anything. Because the worst thing about hunting is like you sit out there in the cold for 6 hours, don't see anything, and then you leave.
Yep.
But so we were then there maybe an hour or two, and both got 2 deer, and we were smitten. But sorry, continue.
No, good. Started hauling them out, and then I think James got to the vehicles first, and then he came back to us and like, hey, there's cops out there by the trucks waiting.
And he shot a deer as well.
Yep. So actually, yeah, that's right. But so
He was coming to help us haul out and saw that trooper.
Trooper was like, listen, we got a call from some neighbor around here saying that you guys are hunting on our land or something, and we're like, we're not, obviously, but he's like, I really don't give a shit about this, but if you guys can get out of here before the NCON officer arrives, then
And Con is like game
Environmental
warden,
conservation
basically. Yeah.
wording.
So yeah, nature police basically.
Yeah. The Rangers, if you will.
Yes.
But so we were still pretty deep in the woods at that point, so kind of we were trying our best to get up there, but by the time we had got to the vehicles, he was already around. So
Yep.
we kind of explained to him the situation and how we were hunting on property behind this person's. We weren't hunting on their property, but there was just like this little corner of her property that we crossed over. And so
And there's like a foot of snow down, so you could easily tell
yeah,
tracks.
You can see our tracks, like where we cut over her property line. And he's like, well, it makes a big difference because you're not like trespassing while hunting. But this person wants to get you guys for trespassing right now. So we got all 3 of us.
Yeah. And for just more context, so the land we were hunting on is owned by like a New York City property, company. So
Okay.
they're not like living there. They don't like tend to the land or anything.
Nope.
We've tried to contact them multiple times to just see if we could hunt it, see if we could buy it, and heard nothing from them. So we said, all right, we can hunt this. Like, no one's gonna really give a shit.
Yep.
But the neighbor on the right, Keister, whose land we didn't trespass, he's the one who called in us trespassing on someone else's land.
Oh, so the
Because
person...
he, like, even
What
though he
the
doesn't own that hunting land, he lives near it and is, like, very defensive. Like, oh, it's basically mine. So he's always guarding it, always been a pain in the ass. There's plenty of other stories we could tell
Probably tell one.
about him, yeah. So, yeah, he's the one who called, and so yeah, we basically had to show up in court. But
Knox courts and to address ourselves for trespassing. And we show up the first time on time. The officer didn't show, and the landowner didn't show. So instead of throwing dismissing the case, because trespassing is a little bit more severe than driving over the speed limit or whatever.
Yeah.
He's like, we're just going to reschedule your court date.
Okay.
So a month later or something, we come back, same thing. No one's there, no officer, no landowner. And so kind of before the second one, though, our dad and the judge kind of like, we're talking just a little bit about the case. Mm-hmm. He's like,
yeah, before it started.
the judge is like, if no one shows, you got a motion to like dismiss the case because they didn't have this certain section of the process signed, and then we can move against it. But so like we get called up for this case, and then the judge is like asking a bunch of questions, and Dad's just like,
Yep.
Yep. But Dad basically beforehand said, like, I've got all my notes here. Like, I've looked into everything. I've emailed the judge ahead of time. Like, I got us covered. Like, you don't have to say anything.
brought this big stack of papers.
And me and Connor are like, all right, cool. Like, we'll just sit back here and be fine. And so, yeah, I mean, they bring it up, and they're like, they still haven't filed it. And they basically looked at my dad and us, and they're like, what do you want to do? And we're not lawyers.
Yeah, I don't know. We didn't know what to
So
say.
we just sit there kind of quiet, and Dad is just like,
Don't worry, guys. I've seen Better Call Saul. I know how this goes.
well, he doesn't say anything. And
So you eventually.
so I go, well, they didn't sign it, or something like that. And the judge is like, well, that's not a problem, like, of the courts. Like, that's not our fault. And then I was like, fuck. And then that's when Dad said, no, like, and then they're like, we're going to dismiss it.
Yeah. There's like this really awkward exchange between Dad and Judge, and then they're like, we're just going to throw this thing.
And I was like, thank God.
Jeez.
Because I thought I just buried us for saying they didn't sign it.
Town and Knox, baby.
But I was
Nothing
like,
going
we got to
on.
say something here. So I just said, like,
Dad was just staring him down.
Well, I think Dad was expecting a different line of questions, you know,
well, he thought he'd have to explain himself, and he never did.
the whole situation. And
So
I'm imagining Dad like preps these sheets, right? And then the judge skips to the end, basically. And so 75% of what Dad had to prepare, he just had to skip. And he was caught off guard.
Yeah.
But
Your dad's incidents, dude. Some of them, I'll get to that in a sec. Oh my god.
But so, I mean, yeah, that was our trespassing thing. But Keister, the guy who tried to nail us, like, there is a feud between the old Gallops and Keister.
Yeah.
That whole family. It's like a legitimate feud. Back, this was probably 35 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, when my dad and our Uncle John were kids and hunted with our great-grandpa.
Hunting with our great-grandpa Altamary. They saw Keister in the woods, had a little discussion, not of the good-natured kind, basically about where they're hunting and why they're there and all that kind of shit. And then as Grandpa and Dad and Uncle John are walking away, Keister pulls a pistol out
No
and
shot.
points it at Dad or John.
Yeah. Well, just at them and direct, like, their
Yep.
direction. Yeah.
And our grandpa fucking spins around, starts loading shotgun shells into his gun. And he was like, don't you dare point your fucking gun at my grandsons. And they almost got in a shootout with this guy in the woods.
I think Dad
That's awesome.
Dad says him and Uncle John, like, dropped on a knee and, like, pointed their guns at him, too.
Yep, it
Like,
got
They had a
real.
standoff.
They did.
That's fucking sick.
almost some Cameron McLeod justice got performed.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Like, this is
Some Cloud
when
9
Dad tells the
justice.
story, he's like all serious. Like, he almost got in a shootout in the woods.
Yeah.
And
You
then
know how old he was?
teenager, 13, 14?
Early hunting days for him, so probably, maybe even, like, 13,
earlier than that.
14.
So it was more.
yeah.
It's probably almost 40 years ago.
This guy Keister. It's a shame he's lived as long as he has.
Yeah.
And he eventually bought the land that we were used to hunt on, where the whole trespassing thing was going down. So we never got to go back there even. And
We got kicked out of our ancestral hunting ground.
Imagine pulling a gun on some kids' backs.
Yeah, some kids.
Shooting two 13-year-olds in the back.
yeah,
That's,
well, I don't think he ever was gonna shoot anyone,
Yeah,
but he
and then
just
nobody
thought he was
shot.
like, I have this pistol.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what, like,
Turn away.
that's the etiquette of a gun. You know, if you have a gun, you know the etiquette of a gun.
So our grandpa, though, was a World War II veteran who was in France and everything.
Oh,
And
jeez.
so he was ready to. Dad always tells it, like, Grandpa would have dropped that guy in half a second, and we would have been burying that guy's body for the rest of the day. That's
Yeah.
how he tells it. Like,
well,
Damn.
credit to our great grandpa too. Didn't back down an
No.
inch, like,
no,
and
Got
made
gun
Keister look
pointed
like
at
a
him.
little bitch, basically too.
fucking walked right up to him.
Holstered his gun and walked away with his
Tail between his legs.
dick.
Too bad
No.
that didn't humble him for life.